Welcome to Fed Renaissance. If you're a former federal employee trying to figure out what's next, start a new business, or looking to remake yourself, you're in the right place. There's no need to walk this road alone. So many former feds have already generated their own success, so why not learn from the paths they've already traveled? I'm your host and federal government alum, Brandon Cory. Fed Renaissance exists to help make you successful and to support your journey of personal and professional self-discovery. Former feds are a formidable force. Come join the movement. Hey folks, welcome to today's edition of the Fed Renaissance podcast. It is just great to be with you, and Jodi-Kaye Wade is with us. And Jodi-Kaye, great to be with you as well. Welcome to the Fed Renaissance podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So Jodi-Kaye is just a talented person who is no stranger to hard work, has worked with the U.S. Agency for International Development, managing really tens of millions of dollars in development programming, working as a senior economic growth advisor, and recently was actually the deputy director for economic growth in Liberia, co-leading a portfolio in climate finance and entrepreneurship of all things, which we'll talk about a bit today on the podcast. But Jodi-Kaye, for folks that don't know, and we'll transition into your current gigs as well, but what is this international development thing, and what is the ultimate objective of that?
Yeah, so I spent over 12 plus years working for the U.S. Agency for International Development, supporting the advancement of countries around the world. I had the pleasure of working mostly in Africa, and development really is a partnership between the United States and our host country to support their development objectives, leveraging our resources and our expertise. But really, the goal is to help advance development metrics around health, agriculture, uh, energy. Those are some of the key areas that I worked in, but we also did education and infrastructure development as well. So the needs really of the country is what we would design as part of our strategy for the country in partnership with the host government, the ministry, the people, and then we would implement activities to help improve in those different areas.
And so what I'm hearing from you at some level, it's really leaving that country stronger than when we initially engaged. Would that be right?
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
I'm thinking healthier, more educated, more able to be self-reliant, create their own businesses, generate their own economic growth, that sort of thing. And now you are a mortgage loan officer and a financial coach. Tell us a bit about that. And I've got my own questions. I don't want to lead the witness here, but yeah, what are you doing now?
Yeah, so I wear multiple hats. One is I'm a real estate investor. I manage my own rental properties. I also pivoted into getting more into real estate and became a licensed loan officer. So I help those who are seeking capital to buy a primary residence or an investment property. I also help those who are looking to really think through alternative ways to build cash flow and to get passive income. So, really talking and coaching people about the journey to enter into real estate as an investor. So, as a coach, I do not just personal finance strategies and improvements on paying down debt or fixing credit, but also help them think about leveraging real estate as part of their portfolio.
So that is a huge leap geographically from West Africa, economic growth, and maybe it's not actually, and I'd love to hear from you where there might be some connections we don't see. But why, from that incredible international experience to real estate, loan officer, financial coaching, why did you choose this specific focus?
So I was already doing real estate for the past 6 years, but it was something I kind of did on the side, thinking this was a way in which I can build additional income as I prepare for retirement in the future. So it was something that I always had a desire to learn more about, but with the career that I had traveling and living overseas, I can't really easily do that actively. So it was
Right.
a passive thing. So I said, in my spirit of pivoting, instead of going back to school or getting another license, how can I build on what I've already been doing? So, learning more about the real estate industry was just an easy thing for me to transition to. Now, have I been a loan officer before? No, but within my work at USAID, I used to help small businesses get access to capital. So we used to guarantee loans for small businesses in the renewable energy, agriculture, and health sectors. So we weren't inside the banks, underwriting the transactions, but we supported those transactions to help reduce default risk. So I've always been in the area of finance and improving access to capital for those who need it. Now I'm
Right.
doing it from a personal perspective, helping people get capital to buy their own home. So that's what I chose to get more into real estate and the finance aspect of it. And the financial coaching really is because everything we do around finances, the foundation is your personal finance. Whether you want to start a business, whether you want to buy a home, your finances are important when it comes to budgeting, credit, being able to save towards your long term goals. And eventually, everyone has a desire to retire.
Right.
So, talking about what are things you need to do now to get where you need to be, so that's why I started my company, Reliance Financial Solutions, to help people with their personal finances. But then, as talking to people about their goals, I realized it would be good for me to get my license to be a loan officer. So I've been doing that, about a year now, and I've really been enjoying it.
Wow. No, that's fascinating, and I like how you've drawn the link between the building blocks too, that it all starts with personal finance, that we're not going to be able to qualify for a loan or to be able to buy our own property necessarily if we don't have our own personal finances in order. And it's fascinating talking to you because you're at least, well, no, just on this side, you're triple faceted from what I can tell on the real estate side. You're doing it yourself. You're your own investor, and you're doing financial coaching, and you're doing the loan officer thing. That's three plus your the fourth would be just the USAID experience as well, not to mention all the other facets. But the fact that you're also investing on your own means you've got street cred, right? You've got the bumps and bruises, so you can be like, hey, here's what to do, here's what not to do. But you're practicing what you preach. What would you say is your your professional identity right now? When folks say, hey, what do you do? And it's a big change, obviously, right? You know, you, 2025 is 2025. We've got to look to the future. When you get the inevitable party question, hopefully it's not the boring "What do you do?" question, but what's your professional? What would you say your professional identity is now?
That's a very good question. I used to always define myself as a diplomat and, working in development. But now I see myself really still as a problem solver, but now helping people solve problems on the personal side. There are people who, have a goal of being a homeowner and thinking through the journey to get there and solving problems around either their debt to income ratio or solving problems around their credit. Having those conversations is how I help people solve problems, but also achieve goals. So, I mean, if someone asks me what I do, I'm in real estate now, but, I still am around solving problems because even once you are under contract, problems come up that people don't normally know. And behind the scenes, there's a team of people working to help you get to closing. So, yeah, I'm a problem solver in the real estate world now.
That is such a versatile title that's applicable to pretty much any profession. Who would not hire a problem solver? Is what I'm thinking. So that's excellent. You're certainly not pigeonholing yourself. So for somebody who's not really initiated in the area, it's like, well, when would I need a loan officer to begin with? What does a loan officer do? How do I know I need one? I think a lot of people might think in the mainstream, well, I'm buying or selling a house, I need a realtor. Where's the loan officer come in, maybe for a first-time home buyer?
The loan officer is actually the first person a person should talk to. And I know oftentimes people see the real estate agent because they're a lot more people facing, they're out there, they're marketing themselves more. There are some loan officers that market themselves, but to be honest, even when I was buying my own home, I always thought I need to talk to an agent. So the reality is the agent tends to refer you to the loan officer because you can't go looking for a house if you don't know what you qualify for. So it's important to know the numbers, how much you can qualify for, what the monthly payment is, what are you comfortable in reference to. Yeah, you may qualify for a $600,000 home, but you're more comfortable with a $450,000 home price, right? Because it's not just the loan, it's the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, depending on how much you put down, mortgage insurance, like all those numbers come up with one value that you're responsible for every month. And if you're buying a condo or in an HOA, that also is added to the monthly payment. So the number is so important. So as a loan officer, I'm the first person a person should talk to. Then after that, you go house hunting. And then once you're under contract, then there's a whole nother step of team of people that are involved, underwriters, appraisers, inspectors. But yeah, that loan officer is the first person. Absolutely.
It reminds me of a conversation I've been just having with my son. He loves sports cars, and part of the conversation is about, hey, it'd be really cool if we could get one. I'm like, yeah, they're expensive, but it's not just buying the car, it's the maintenance. And if it's a foreign, import, then, the maintenance could be specialized and the parts could be much more expensive. So a very similar thing. You're not just purchasing an asset, you're purchasing maintenance, you're purchasing, mortgage and a tax burden and the whole thing. Um, there are a lot of personal finance podcasts, but this podcast is really about those who are remaking themselves, like you are and have. And folks may be thinking, I'm a former Fed. I've heard a lot about real estate being a good investment. I've thought about becoming, say, involved in the industry. For you personally, why a loan officer as opposed to a realtor? Why did you choose that specific route? What are the pros and cons in your
So for me, as I mentioned, I enjoy the numbers when it comes to any type of activity. From when I was working with small businesses to now working with those who are looking to purchase a home. So having the numbers and understanding the numbers is very important for both aspects, right? So I chose to be a loan officer because whether you see a home that is renovated and bright and shiny and new that you want to buy, and then you're, concerned about the neighborhood and this and that. For me, that was never something that excited me that I wanted to be involved in. But if you're talking about running numbers and making decisions and figuring out the interest rate and all of that, that got me excited. So that's why I chose that path. But when it comes to, the conversation around transitioning from government,
Yeah.
and whether one should go into real estate or not, I would say that if you're in the government already, you can start to be involved in real estate already, which is what I did.
Mm,
I started by buying one home that I made a rental. I worked with a property management company, screened and found a tenant. Then I bought another one and another one. So I would say start with just one home, first where you live, right? And then save up to then get a second one. Being a homeowner, as you talked about, is a great way to build wealth, right? But it's also a great way to diversify income. Because when you do need to transition, if anything ever happens with the change of administration or whatever, you can at least have something else coming in while you figure out your next full-time job or you
mm,
want to start a business. Because having something constantly coming in helps cover your basic needs. So for me, within the past 6, 7 years being a landlord, first initial years I used property management. Then after that, I started to self-manage. And I've been using a tool called Turbo Tenant to help me self-manage even till today.
mm.
I'm able to market the property online.
Okay.
I'm able to collect the rent. I am able to communicate with the tenant for maintenance issues. I'm able to upload documents and share with tenants, send receipts once they pay. All of that leveraging technology.
Wow.
So this is just a once a month or every couple of months, you know, when you have to do inspections that takes time, right? While you're doing your job, right? Your W-2 job. And then, as you continue to save and build that portfolio, you never know, you can grow it so much where that passes your 9 to 5. So that's what I would advise people to do. But then, if you're like, oh, well, I've heard of risk, what if tenants doesn't pay? Of course, you should be conservative about how you spend and manage the money you get when they are paying, right? Because there's always
Right.
going to be, as you said, maintenance and repairs. But I still just to say, like you can start small and grow it. And then if you ever transition, you have that consistent income source coming in. Or if you never leave the government, that's money there that can add to your retirement, which is what I had planned to do.
Right.
But, I would encourage people to check out Bigger Pockets, which is a really good platform where I learned about kind of real estate as a beginner.
Okay.
And then
This is
eventually,
a website called Bigger Pockets.
it's a community. It's a really
Oh,
big
okay.
real estate community. So there's a
Gotcha.
website, there's a Facebook group, there's I think, podcasts and other channels, but basically you learn the beginning steps of going into real estate from the buy and hold perspective or the short-term rental perspective. But, if people have an interest in doing more than just investing in the stock market, I feel like that would be the best first step.
That's excellent. And if I'm not mistaken, Jodi-Kaye, I think it might have been you at some point. You and I obviously are connected through other networks, having both been employed by USAID. I think I remember you saying, "I'm never going to have a single source of income again." Which is just wise, frankly. And I just appreciate that comment. It really stuck with me. I'm like, this is a smart lady. Um, so Bigger Pockets really focusing on becoming, what I'm hearing is the aspects of the basic building blocks of being a real estate investor. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And then, on the other side, if somebody wants to become a real estate professional and,
Mhm.
where it does become the dinner party, what do you do? I'm a real estate professional. I'm not just an investor. I'm in the industry. Maybe you could walk us through a little bit. What did that take for you, in terms
Mhm.
of becoming a loan officer? What kind of hoops did you have to jump through, setting up your own business, and how you've managed to run that business and get it established?
So, as I mentioned, I own the company Reliance Financial Solutions. So, I register the company. I have an LLC. I have an EIN. I have a marketing budget. I have, things I set up, right, for my own company. But as a loan officer, it's a commission-based job. So basically, I set up my book of business over time. What that means is I build relationship with agents, I'm cold calling people, and establishing myself in the industry. But before I did all of that, the first step was to decide I want to be a loan officer and figure out how to get the license. So there were trainings I had to do online for the state of Florida, where I first started with my license. I'm now licensed in 4 states, but I started with Florida. I then took the national exam. I studied for that. It was an online training, but I studied for that. And then after about 3 to 4 weeks, I then took the exam, passed the first time. And then I went on to market myself to mortgage companies to say, hey, I'm a newly licensed loan officer. I would like to enter the industry. Can you take me on as a junior loan officer? So they said, sure, but this is a commission-based industry. You got to get your own transactions to be able to get compensated. So from August to basically December, I was, as I said, cold calling people, trying to build relationship with agents, trying to establish myself, and basically learning as I go with guidance from senior loan officers. So as I was doing that, by December, I had a few transactions, which I closed, and then I continued from there.
Right.
But yeah, this is an industry in real estate where literally no one gets a 9 to 5 W-2 job. Everyone is commissioned, which is so
Right.
surprising, from the underwriters to processors, to loan officers, agents. Like, unless you close a loan or unless you close a purchase, no one get compensated. So, there's a lot of time and effort and risk associated with this business. You don't get a salary every 2 weeks, but if you're able to screen your transactions well up front as a loan officer and make sure they're qualified. And then if the client is committed to the process and inspection isn't too crazy, then you can move forward, through the closing. But sometimes there's surprises, like appraisal comes in low and seller doesn't agree to lower their purchase price. And, sometimes you got to walk away and then the client moves on to another home.
Mm.
But you can basically get them pre-approved and they're under contract and close within a month. It can go really fast.
Right. So I mean, it's certainly one of those industries where hustle really matters. The check's not coming unless you go after it, for sure.
Absolutely.
Um, how long did it take, just so folks know, from beginning to end, when you decide to get certified as a loan officer to finally getting certified, how many months was that process for a single state, let's say?
So the trading, or I did the online trading and self-studied about a month. And then after that, I got the exam in person. I had to do a background check, fingerprinting, maybe a month and a half to 2 months. Yeah.
Really? That's fairly expedited. I mean, I thought you were
Yeah.
going to say 3 to 6 months minimum,
Mm-mm.
honestly.
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
So I mean that's really encouraging because I mean there's certainly a demand for that, and this is a certification that you can get if you're I'm not going to say relatively easily. What I'm going to say is if you're quantitatively inclined, which I'm not. That's why I'm not saying relatively easily. But for those of you listening that are quantitatively inclined and you love the numbers like Jodi-Kaye does, then it's something you may want to think about. Yeah, go ahead.
And I will also say laws. The
Laws. Okay.
exam is a lot about laws.
Okay.
Yeah. So once you start doing the business, you don't hear the laws as much, but the guidelines of what qualifies a person, yeah. So a lot of
Okay.
rules govern what we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which, as former federal employees, there are no laws or guidelines that govern federal employment. So, hopefully as a former Fed, you'd have a lot of background in executive orders and laws and knowing how to navigate within those. So good point. You'd have a lot of laws and guidelines to memorize and become familiar with as well. I'm curious, back to sort of the passion and the way that you're oriented as a person, because a lot of the remaking yourself and the transition from a former federal employee is really wrestling with deep questions of identity. Oh my goodness, I was this, I used to do this, I was so passionate about it. I say I loved it. For some people may have not loved their federal career, and that's fine. You still need it to put food on your family, as they say. Great, but if you loved it, you're like, well, my gosh, what if not that, then what? And what is going to light me up at the end of the day? Um, I want to talk about the first time home buyer and the meetings you have with them, and they're trying to figure out the numbers. What can I afford? What can I do? What makes you tick on that? What do you really love about engaging with them? They might be bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. They might be terrified. They might have, come to the meeting or the Zoom call with little baby in the arms. A lot of things in play there. What really gets you going on helping these first-time home buyers?
Wow, that is such a great question. There are people who are so excited about the home buying process, and even if they make a lot of money, they often feel they don't qualify.
Yes.
Simply because a lot of people in the United States have student loans, or a lot of people in the United States, the cost of living is so high, they're thinking, well, I spend so much, on this home. I don't think I could even afford a mortgage, especially now I got to deal with maintenance too.
Yeah.
So sometimes my first conversation is often telling people, let's take it one step at a time. No matter how knowledgeable and educated, even medical doctors I've talked to, they're like super nervous. So I'm like, let's take it one step at a time. Let's
Yeah.
look at the application. Let me review your income, your assets, your debt to income ratio. Then let's talk about monthly payment. And then this is the first of many conversations, is what I always say,
Mhm.
to kind of calm them down, because there are not a lot of people coming confident, like, oh, of course I'll get a loan. There's always these fears, and it's scary for some people, like the idea of a 30-year mortgage. But I tell people what I was told. Basically, if you don't want to keep it anymore, just sell it. Like it's not a permanent contract.
Right.
If for some reason you relocate or you don't like the house anymore, it's an asset where you've been putting money into. You can get it back when you sell. So remember that. Think of the tax benefit. Think of why you even want to buy in the first place. So I have that conversation with them to then try to encourage and motivate them to keep going.
That's so critical. I think just the idea of calming somebody in what is easily one of the most major purchases of their life and saying, look, like anything else, how do you eat an elephant? I've never eaten an elephant. I don't know about you. One bite at a time, and just take it, take it methodologically and or methodically, and we'll get there. Um, so is it safe to say you're 100% self-employed then?
Basically, yeah. Mhm.
So again, and again, back to a bit of the psychology here, not just of the first-time home buyer, but of the former Fed who's looking at remaking themselves. Um, what what would you say about the psychology needed, and the self-talk needed to become self-employed? Going from a situation where you've got a highly structured federal environment, 9 to 5, maybe more than that. Even federal government gets crazy busy sometimes. I get it, but it's very structured and predictable in a lot of ways. Um, what do you think is needed in a person's psyche to move to the self-employment context?
Hmm. It's been about a year and I'm still processing it myself.
Okay, fair enough.
There are moments I am like, I hope I close these transactions to pay my bills, but I got to keep thinking about the next one and the next one. It is pretty intense, to be quite frank. It's not an easy career to have. I've talked to people who've moved from the loan officer world to processor, where basically they take the transactions once you have a client under contract. And they also are like, "Ooh, y'all have a hard job," because
Mm,
they don't have to go out and find the business. The business comes to them and they just kind of close them, help us close them, right? So, one would say, okay, that's an easier job, but really, not really, because they're relying on us. So,
right.
yeah, it's tough. It's tough
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Is there, you know, is there a sense of freedom at all though? Because I have talked to others that also experience some of that. It's like, well, it's also on me. I'm not there's I my performance evaluator is me. I'm not getting my own performance evaluation. Time might be more flexible. What are some of the things that you may have also found attractive about being self-employed?
So during the transition last year, I gave birth to my son,
Oh, congrats.
Josiah. Thank you. So during this period, I've been able to also take care of him. He's with me full time.
Oh, well.
So that's been the most enjoyable experience for me
Mm,
because with my daughter, who's about to be 4, I was not able to be around due to the nature of my demanding foreign service career. So that's the highlight of now being self-employed. I can go to my daughter's school for a program, which they had last week for mother-daughter
oh, nice.
activities. In the middle of the day, I can just
Yeah,
go. Uh, and clients are calling and I'm texting them. I'm like, I'll get back to you because I'm at my daughter's school.
right.
When it comes to, as I mentioned, being around with my son, going to doctor's appointments, I'm able to work around family versus I would have to ask for leave from work. So that's been a positive for me. Mhm.
That's great. Yeah, and you don't get those moments back either. And making that time in the middle of the day is just precious. Um,
I'll say one thing
yeah.
though, which is
Hmm.
kind of funny.
Mm,
I don't have a office environment from a work environment.
okay.
So, for example, the other day, my daughter was like, "Is that Doctor?" calling. That's one of my clients because I'm always on the phone.
That's wild. Oh my
A
goodness.
first-time home buyer, and I'm always, like, answering her questions. She's under contract now. So,
Uh-huh.
like, I'm always talking to clients all the time, even in
Right.
evenings. So my daughter is hearing me, and she's like, "Doctor is calling. Is that doctor is calling?"
That's so funny.
So it's like, "Oh my goodness,
So
I
the
work too much."
division between home life and work life can be a little blurry is what I'm hearing as well then. Yeah. And you probably have to just decide when to turn it off or, what do they say? Sleep when the baby sleeps, or maybe in your case, work when the baby sleeps. I mean,
Yeah.
what would you say about your personality? Do you feel like your personality is that it takes a certain personality type to be your own boss and to do this? And what aspects of your personality prepared you to do this?
Hmm. Well, you definitely have to take initiative. No one is going to give you a loan or a client. You have to go out there and make those calls, go to some networking events to meet people, really be proactive and take initiative.
Hmm.
I've been leveraging social media as well to post constantly to also let my network know kind of what I'm doing now and if they know anyone that's looking to buy a home. But really, you have to have a proactive attitude to be able to be successful.
That makes sense. And, the network, pretty much every line of business is about people somewhere is going to be about people. And the networking that you mentioned is obviously important. To what extent has it been helpful to even network through the federal contacts you've had? I mean, some, former feds might be thinking, well, I don't really know what I want to do, but at least I do have a network of, say, former colleagues. Has that been helpful to have a network of former colleagues, or has it been really developing an entire separate network that's unique to what you're doing now?
So I've had to do a combination of both. Some of my first initial transactions were former, or I won't say former colleagues, but they were part of the embassy network. So State
Mm,
Department colleagues who were preparing to move back to the US this summer. So they were telling me, hey, I'm looking to purchase a home. It'll be my new primary residence. So those who are in South Africa and overseas, helping them prepare to move back to the US. And then obviously a lot of the agents that I now work with, these are new established relationships that I've had to form. I basically reached out, did some phone calls, do video calls, introduce myself, tell them what I'm doing now, say how I can help them and the team that I'm working with, and to really communicate confidence and a certain level of expertise so that they trust in me to do the job well, but also take care of their clients.
right. So you've had to take initiative in developing new relationships. Again, they're not going to come to you. You've got to reach out and say, "Hey, you want to do a virtual cup of coffee, real cup of coffee? I'd love to pick your brain." That sort of thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, and being proactive, there being, extremely important, and you have the luxury, I think, as well, of just the fact that you weren't totally new to this, at least in your federal role, you had some experience with regard to, loans and financing and how some of that, worked. Did I'm curious too for those that, are looking at making the leap, they can there can easily be negative self-talk, I'm not really sure that my federal career has prepared me for this. Um, what would you say to somebody who's like maybe doubting that their federal career has given them much beyond bureaucracy management in terms of skills? Um, what have you found is actually present for you in terms of how your federal career has prepared you for where you are now?
Mm. That first few months when I realized that I had to change careers, change my lifestyle, I tried to find those similar transferable skill sets with where I was applying. because I was initially applying for jobs.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I didn't feel like they appreciated my past experiences. So it often made me feel like, do I even have anything to bring
Mm,
to an organization? So I would say, whether or not you can communicate it to a new employer or to yourself, you need to realize that whatever you're doing now or whatever you'll do next, you're going to learn, and you're going to learn it quickly because you're putting now a lot of time and effort into your new craft. So for me, when I first put together a loan, I didn't know what I was doing. I was taking notes as my senior loan officer was talking to me. And then after now, I don't know, 50 or 60 different transactions I've reviewed and tried to structure, no one can tell me anything I don't know. Of course, I'm still learning, right? But there's so many different loan products, right? But once you're doing the FHA a few times or conventional a few times, you're like, okay. And then if you don't know something, then you can look up the guidelines. But, when you first start something, I think that first 6 months, you're wondering like, oh man, what am I doing? Did I really make a mistake? Am I screwing up someone's life and transaction? Whatever you're working on. But
yeah.
I think if you go into it with a certain level of, I'm going to make an effort to try something new because this is now my new life. This is my new career. I have to figure it out quickly. Then
Yeah.
I think you'll navigate. But for sure, there are a lot of transferable skill sets from the government to private sector, nonprofit entrepreneurship. But sometimes it's not really understood from
Yeah.
those who are trying to hire you, or they're not willing to accept because they're looking for a certain type of person. So, for example, one job I was looking at that I really liked, they were looking for DoD experience. I didn't
Mm,
have, but I had another federal government why wasn't that, acceptable. And then there
right.
was another job they were looking at consulting or sales. I come from
Mm,
government. I didn't have that. So I
right.
feel like sometimes they were so narrow in what they were looking for. Those who don't fit that cookie cutter model weren't
Right.
even given a chance to demonstrate that they can do the work.
Yeah, and I think there's something that you're highlighting that's really important psychologically for us as federal workers, that we have to figure out how to, and it is doable, how to figure out how to parlay our prior experience into something that's still applicable. For example, you need some experience in sales or DoD or a specific agency or whatever. Well, the encouragement that I would give to former federal workers is primarily three things off the top of my head. But one, the federal government is an incredibly complex space. And so for somebody asking for DoD or now DOW, I guess, experience, that's an incredibly complex space. And the answer is I've navigated complexity before. Part of it is scale. You go out into private industry and, like you said, Jodi-Kaye at the beginning, you're managing millions and millions of dollars. And that scale, like getting to that level in private industry takes a while. And you're coming in from as a former federal government being like, I've dealt with this scale for decades and I know how to operate at scale, whether it's in sales or whether it's in consulting. And then the other one, I think that's even somewhat unique, but maybe undervalued, is just your cross-cultural skills already, having navigated in Africa and elsewhere, moving into a new industry, showing that you can talk to all different kinds of people and meet them where they are and not assuming that they have the same worldview. I mean, how important is that in sales? Like, my goodness, and so I would just encourage listeners too to think about there are all sorts of things that may not be a one for one transfer. Yeah, you don't do a lot of sales. In fact, you talk to a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, and certainly that's applicable. So that's um no, I'm delighted we had this conversation. And like you said, just being committed to learning that new discipline is so much of it. And you've done that already. Just learning any aspect of the federal government is a challenge. Um, so back to you and your actual trajectory in setting up your own business. Are you doing both the financial coaching and the loan officer work both under Reliant Financial?
No. So
Okay.
I am a loan officer and mortgage broker with Edge Home Finance,
Okay.
one of the largest mortgage brokers in the country. So essentially, I have access to over 100 plus different lenders as I shop for the best rates, products, and pricing for clients. And my own company, Reliance Financial Solutions, where I'm a financial coach, that's complementary to the work I do as a loan officer.
Gotcha. In setting up Reliant Financial, walk us through how you went about doing that. Some people might just throw up their hands like, I don't even know how to set up my own thing. You mentioned setting up your LLC, you've got the EIN, that sort of thing. Was that a pain? How did you go through that? And kind of what was your step-by-step process for setting up Reliant?
Yeah, so I set up Reliance Financial Solutions basically online, and it was a lot of waiting. So once I submitted the paperwork, waiting to hear back from the state of Florida, which is where I registered, and then requesting the IN, and then after I got those documents, requesting the bank to open up a business account, and I had to apply for merchant services to take credit cards, and all of these things was just online, but I had to wait for a lot of those things to be approved. But the key thing is after doing all of that, which costs a lot of time and money, is really getting your client. Because the first month, not even month, first 3 months, I spent almost $5,000-6,000, and then after that, bringing in clients, it was basically and has been basically a loss my first year, but that's pretty
Mm,
normal. Until you start to really bring in a lot more income from clients as the word spreads about your service.
sure, sure. And how much of the business you've brought in has been word of mouth versus proactive advertising? I mean, maybe give us a pastiche of how you've gone about marketing your business and what you've learned there.
So, as a financial coach, it's been a lot of word of mouth. I may have done one or two social media ads. As a loan officer, it's been also word of mouth, social media posts. I've done a few webinars where I've done ads attached to those, but it's been mainly word of mouth as well. Um, but as a loan officer, we also incur quite a bit of expenses. I may not establish a company, but a lot of the credit reports that are pulled for clients to analyze their finances, we have to pay for that upfront as a mortgage broker. Marketing costs, if I do any kind of in-person event, paying for flyers. So no matter what you do, whether you're a small business or, you're a loan officer where you generate your own business, there costs. And it's just the reality of the career I've now chosen.
Sure. And what do you feel of those has been the most effective? How have you been able to acquire a customer base most effectively?
Word of mouth
Really?
and
Yeah.
referrals. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You mentioned something, and my father built, a small business when I was growing up, and he never advertised, and he said the same thing. The word of mouth is kind of some of the best advertising you can get because nobody's going to refer you if they had a bad experience. So if you're getting the referral to begin with, it's like, oh, well, they thought it was good enough to refer, so that's good. You mentioned something that I think, folks may not be familiar with as well as social media ads. I mean, certainly we're on the receiving end of those ads all day, every day, but is it complicated to advertise your business on social media? Maybe walk us through that for those of us that haven't experienced putting ourselves out there like that.
Yeah, so I would say I'm not an expert in the social media ads, but what I've done so far is basically image content and links to websites.
Okay,
But I know you can do videos as an ad and some other innovative methods. But basically, once I post on Facebook, it also goes on Instagram.
gotcha. Okay. It also goes on Instagram by virtue of Facebook doing that for you, or is there a different app that you have to use to post to multiple platforms at the same time?
One platform.
One platform. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Talk to us maybe a little bit about, uh, I always hate to go here, but it's a reality of life, which is taxes. And, that's a daunting subject as well, but it has to be taken care of. And for folks that are looking at putting themselves out there and starting their own business, How have you navigated the tax scene? Have there been any hacks or tools that have helped you? Is it as daunting as people might think it is? Maybe you can talk a few folks off the ledge, if you will.
So, both as a real estate investor and recently now as a small business owner, I have leveraged a CPA. So, I don't do that on my own.
Okay, fair
I
enough.
do not want to be in a situation where I owe the government money. So, last year I used a CPA. I mean, for last year's taxes, I used a CPA this April.
Okay,
April 15th deadline, right? So the CPA did my taxes. I had a loss, I had to pay for federal, but I didn't owe DC. And, he did all of the paperwork for me. But I would say, especially the first few years, just hire a CPA to get it done right.
okay, that's really good advice. And is it a daunting level of expense, or I mean, presumably, if you're running a small business, the business is small and therefore not very complex. So is that a fairly reasonable expense? Hiring somebody?
Yes, it's not too expensive.
Not too expensive. No, that's good. Um, you mentioned, I thought it was fascinating, Turbo Tenant that you mentioned, just to help with property management. Have there been any other, tools that you found along the way that have just made your life easier in terms of a small business owner?
Hmm. Well, when I started up my company, technology systems for email and for how can I say communication with clients, I use Microsoft, which is also a platform. But Google has also a similar platform called Workspaces. So that wasn't too expensive and it really helps me be able to communicate via email and do video calls and all of that pretty seamlessly. So that's also something I would recommend.
For you personally, how do you measure success? Do you have certain metrics that you're always looking at, or what is that? What does success mean to you in this professional setting?
So for me, success is being able to replace my W-2 job income.
Okay.
So that's what I'm working towards. But I also see success as being able to close certain number of loans per month.
Okay.
So I am working towards at least 3 to 4 loans a month consistently. I know colleagues like my team lead who close like 12, 13 loans a month, but he's been in the business for some years.
Wow. Mhm.
So as a new person, I'm hoping to consistently close at least 2 to 3.
Great.
But my goal is definitely to replace my income from before.
Right. Right. No, that's great. And I think, having, if you don't have something to shoot for, you're not going to reach it, right? And so having those concrete goals, I think the thing I wanted to underscore is that that does also help you get out of bed in the morning. It helps you keep
Mhm,
motivated, keep going. Sort of it's like,
mhm.
all right, I'm going to the gym and I'm doing 30 push-ups is my goal. All right. And if I hit 28, then tomorrow 30 is my goal, right? Just keep chipping away at it and you're likely to, make progress. And, you know, what you mentioned, I think your team lead, but what role has mentorship and uh what do I want to say? Social connection with others that are traveling a similar journey. Can you speak to who's really influenced you the most or provided some of the, maybe not the who, but just what role has mentorship had in your journey and perhaps the encouragement and learning for other colleagues who are on similar paths? How has that affected you?
So mentorship is so important in whatever path one takes, whether it's starting their own business. I know that within the USAID community, we have a community WhatsApp group where other small business owners have established themselves since, pivoting and leaving USAID. So we've often shared resources and knowledge with each other. So that's been really helpful, especially as you talk about taxes and marketing, and email lists and different things, technology to use for that. But another key for me personally, as I pivoted to being a loan officer, is whether I am with a direct lender and I had a senior loan officer I worked with, or now that I'm with a mortgage broker, and I'm basically an independent broker, but I am under a team within the Big Edge Home Finance LLC. My team lead who brought me onto Edge, he's a resource I can call whenever I have a question, in addition to the guidelines that we can look up. So that's often great because of all of his experience. I'm sure any scenario I bring, he's seen it before, which
Right.
is really helpful. So, having a point of contact to call, brainstorm ideas, just check in because, as a small business owner or as a loan officer, I work remote. I'm at home by myself all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, you don't have a community or colleagues per se, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's also another challenge, right? When you're trying to be entrepreneurial and stay motivated, is you don't really have other people to brainstorm ideas with. So, having someone you can call on, for me, the team lead within Edge has been super helpful as well.
Yeah. No, that's so good to note because I mean, really, we do better in community in general, whether that's personally or professionally. And all it takes is one person, all it takes is, and you might be that person to start that community from your former agency and say, hey, this is the path I'm on. I'm trying to start my own thing. Are any of you on this path? And again, word of mouth is incredibly effective. It's like, well, hey, I'm not, but Bubba over here is. And then all of a sudden, Bubba joins, and Bubba knows three other people. And then you end up with this community of folks, on WhatsApp or whatever your, platform of choice is. And you can start connecting and sharing those lessons. And you might be that person. So setting up that community could be excellent. So I appreciate you pointing it out, Jodi-Kaye. And then on the mentorship piece, learning from those who are more senior in the industry or have been there longer. I've heard of some people, even in an unemployed status saying, look, I know this is the direction I want to go. I'm going to go see if I can provide free labor somewhere and just intern and absorb for a while, and if you have the ability to do that in an area, again, back to passion, because, passion is important in terms of keeping you sustainable and keeping you motivated on the path that you're on. That's another thing you can do as well that I've heard uh, being very effective. Well, let me ask you this as we begin to wrap up and, leaving words of advice. And, you and I are both early in this journey. And I think it's fascinating just to be walking this journey with other colleagues, all at the same time. And I'm sure those are listening who are like, all right, well, what are people finding out there in the Wild West, so to speak? I always start with the negative and end on the positive here, but what are some of the hard lessons, Jodi-Kaye, that have been difficult to learn? Maybe the things like, I wish I hadn't done that. You can call them mistakes, but that's a little too harsh because we learn even from those. But what are like the oopses that you're like, if I had to do it over, I would have done this, or I'd recommend against X, Y, and Z. What are your thoughts there on the things that you would have changed?
Wow, this is a really great question. So when I first started my company for my personal business, Reliance Financial Solutions, I spent a lot of time spending on ads because I felt I wanted to quickly start bringing in clients. But then when I was bringing in clients, my price point was, I thought, more affordable, which would get more people to take my service. But in reality, last year with what's going on in the economy, a lot of people were like, I didn't want to spend anything, not even the price point, which for me it was not a lot, like 150,
Wow.
excuse me, 200,000 for a session. But there were other people who purposely charge, which I would need a lot of clients to be able to cover my expenses, right? With the 150, $200. But then I would talk to someone who's doing a similar service charging 4,000, 5,000,
Wow.
and they don't need as many clients. So then I'm like, okay, what is my how is my service being valued when I'm even charging so low, when I'm trying to make it just accessible to more people? So that was a major lesson because I'm incurring costs of setting up my company, spending $5,000. But then there are people who I was attracting that was even questioning whether 150 or 200 was even a good price.
Right.
So that was a major lesson for me. And
Did
then
and sorry,
also
before I hate to interrupt. So did you end up finding that you needed to bump your price point up to almost be like, yeah, you're getting a premium service, or where did you land on that?
So yeah, I definitely realized I needed to increase my costs, but I also then started to take on other aspects, which is the becoming a loan officer, right? And that ended up taking a lot of my time, but I also would get compensated more. And I never felt that the client had to come up with the cost themselves to pay for my service. The lender does,
Gotcha.
but that's what I end up pivoting more to because, whether it's 2025 or is the booming year 2020, some people are just really nervous about paying for service. So I say, okay, listen, this is what I provide. If you're willing to pay, great. If not, I have other income sources that I also can cover my bills. So I just diversified my efforts, and that's why I ended up becoming a loan officer as well.
Great, great.
Another thing that I learned quite a bit last year is sales can be uncomfortable. So, when you are talking to friends, family, or people you don't know about what you're doing and why they should work with you, or even when you're cold calling people, you have to be quite comfortable with people rejecting you.
Mm,
So that was really, really tough, because I came from a position where I was in management and people wanted to talk to me. People were excited to engage with me and meet with me and representing the US government overseas and all of that. And then now people didn't even care to even hear what I had to say. So that was a little hard adjusting to.
mm,
But I know it's the sales world, right? A lot of doors are closed to your face and you work really hard for that, yes.
right.
Um so that's been some of the challenges till date.
When you mentioned friends and family, it sparks something else about some folks would say it's no big deal. Others would say, well, I don't do business with friends and family. Do you draw that line at all, or any thoughts or recommendations on doing business with friends and family?
I'll work with whomever,
Yeah,
because those who know me, trust me, and are willing to hopefully speak positively about me, especially after we work together on a transaction.
yeah, fair enough. Well, on a positive note, as you kind of look back at this, this recent experience, what are the things you're like, okay, I'm feeling good about this. I'm on the right track. I would recommend this to others. Here are a couple things I really got right, and I'm proud of myself for.
So most recently, I helped a military reservist doctor who was connected to me by her sister because I was doing a webinar to educate people about the home buying process. The sister never actually attended, or my former client or the client never attended the webinar, but her sister told her about it, and then eventually she was ready to have a conversation. So we met, and we spoke on a Sunday. She applied that evening, then was pre-approved within a couple of days, and then she recently closed about a month or so ago. But from start to finish, I thought we weren't going to make it because she kept saying, "Oh, I don't think this is going to work out." She was so nervous.
Mm,
And I was just so thankful when she finally got the keys because the initial conversation was, "I don't know if I will qualify. I have student loans or, I don't even know if I'm going to stay in this area." There were so many reasons she was making up
mhm,
to
mhm, mhm.
not go through the process. So I was just so happy when she finally closed on her home. And she was overjoyed as well.
That's so awesome. And honestly, just to have somebody to walk with her through the process, and again, hey, we're just gonna take it a step at a time. I know that she valued that as well. So, beautiful story there. Well, let me ask you this just in closing, Jodi-Kaye, for anybody that would want to reach out to you, find you online, all those things, tell us a bit more. Where can folks find you and get in touch?
Yeah, so I'm on all the social media platforms. Jodi-Kaye Wade, Jodi-Kaye
Okay, no hyphens or
and
anything, all one word.
well, you'll find me even without the hyphen.
Perfect.
So I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and basically, if you've ever thought about buying a home or an investment property, I'm happy to talk to you. Um, that very first home I bought back in 2019, I was scared. But it was the agent who said, if it doesn't work out, to sell it. And I don't know why that gave me such peace.
Wow.
But now I am so thankful. Many years later, I've had up to 7 houses, and I sold a few recently. But yeah, like, I'm just so thankful that I made that decision, because decisions you make 6-7 years ago can be a blessing to you many years later, when your whole life changes, and now you have to leverage that money to live or to take care of your household. So
Yeah, no, just a great parting note to end on. Folks, Jodi-Kaye Wade at Reliant Financial Solutions. Again, find her on any of those social media platforms. Jodi-Kaye Wade, doesn't matter how you type it, you'll find her. Jodi-Kaye, thank you so much. It was a delight to chat with you. I wish you the very best in this journey, and we'll look forward to being in touch.
Awesome. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you so much. Take care. Hey, thanks for being with us today on Fed Renaissance. And remember, don't like or subscribe, at least not until you've checked out episode 2.